Good evening. Good evening, Devulji. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Fine, fine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
It's been good times. I realized the more you do, like I don't even know Advocate Devulji till he got in touch with me, and the topic is so very interesting. It's about recoveries. So all of us are facing this problem of recoveries, and suddenly I get a call from Vinayak ji saying, "Can you give an opportunity to an advocate?" I said, "What do you mean opportunity? I'll be more than happy to welcome because my kids are facing this problem." Then immediately I contacted my students, right, and I said, "Please come," right, and then attend this session. There were three topics that advocate they will give me. One is what, and he's well versed. He practices in the High Court, and there were three topics. I said, "Sir, consumer protection is very good, but ye kar dijiye recoveries because that is something which kids are struggling." Though I should really thank Anjay ji, who's really helping everybody, but still we need to know, right, what is the next best thing. So very simple. I will just quickly come across, and I would like to tell Advocate Devulji, especially others are always. So Advocate Devulji, this is all for Hunger Collective. This is movement feed the poor and needy. I've got the entire list of donors with me, which I will now analyze and put it up. So you are also helping students, with who in turn have sponsored some poor and needy families. So that's the agenda. This is the logo which we started. I think we started 2.5 months back. Long journey. Yes, the disclaimer clause is valid, but I'm not coming in with the disclaimer clause. Rajshri Sai ma'am and Ashlesha ma'am, they are the founders and they are pushing this like anything. The two ladies. Okay. So we need just 200 rupees to feed a family. I again always say this. I understand the value of 200 rupees now, and you know. So yes, thank you, Gani, for this wonderful thing. Right, we make magic happen. We is all of us, right? Even those who are viewing our videos on YouTube, we make magic happen. Please remember, your employees are depending on you all. So please take up your health. Only if your health is taken care of, the company will run. And company is not 10 or 15. I'm sure there are 400 people at least in one of the company I visited in Vapi. Some of you will have 4, 5 factories, so I don't need to tell you all. So these are all the sponsors. Love you all. I don't want to keep talking about each one of you all. So integrated group, I'm in touch with many of them, right? Each one of them rather, right? Except Saili Parik, which I'll get back, right? Shaf Alvi, love them. Hartek Simmer, I just spoke the other day, right? Anjay ji is helping everybody on the Telegram group. Nothing to say but thanks. Moment somebody says recovery is done, he will come and say, okay, tell me, I'll help you. But today we'll go one step further and understand the legal implications. Right, Pratik came sponsored. After that, I've not heard about Pratik. George sir, daily I speak to him, almost every second day. I love him for what he's guiding us, right? And yeah, Hiten Group again gone quite suddenly. I think the lockdown is also hurting some colleagues, but please don't slow down. That's the take precautions and keep moving. Take precautions and keep moving. This is the lovely kid, right? 70th birthday of father celebrated in a special way, right? Thank you very much. Today's sponsor. So we'll be repeating this. We did it yesterday, but Srikunj could not make it yesterday. So today he's there. I requested him to come. So what he does is, Mr. Chandak does is very simple. He will donate a part of the sales to this wonderful movement, Hunger Collective. Thank you, Bete. I publicly thank you. Yesterday I was looking for you. Today you are there. Thank you publicly. And I love that you have put your family's photograph first. You've not even put your photograph. That's even more praiseworthy. It's because of kids like you that I think Indian family managed businesses are alive. Okay, and I'm getting a very nearby perspective now. Okay, this is the logo, Mamok, right? And this is the entire family business in business. I had said that yesterday. I repeated, this is my kit, Shikun Chandak, right? So this is the entire product offering, woven fabrics, woven garments, women uniforms, medical supply. Products varied, but I think products is very impressive. More impressive is better the way you are doing things. To contribute a part of your sales for this movement, I can only say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Yes, home textiles, right, markets all over. My kid has a great dream, which will be fulfilled very soon. It has got to do with United States. Yeah, this is Hunger Collective. I think more than 1 lakh people served. I've realized one thing that, you know, the more you help people, the more God comes in and says, okay, do this. Okay. Platform is ready. The name of the platform is Synergize Business. We are looking for registering the trademark and then we will launch it. So very soon that announcement will come. I will just stop now. Smiles and blessings of the people we reached out to. Right. Again, I repeat, today's sponsor, logo, family. I pull back. I now invite Advocate Devul Dige, right? Academic credentials, Bachelor of Commerce, Company Secretary, my God. First attempt at all levels, LLB, LLM. So these are his academic credentials, right? Company Secretary, first attempt, all levels, LLB, LLM. Work profile, like he has finished his work from JM Financial, again, a very well-known investment banker. Then he has participated in several legal competitions, and he interned with Kocher and Company. Even before completing his law, he was given the designation of advocate in SD Israni Law Chambers. That's very good. During the course of his engagement with the firm in the year 2017, Devulji handled corporate litigation and insolvency application, property and advisory and consultancy matters. Extremely very well competent, right? He has handled various company petitions, insolvency petitions, right? Suits of various description, consumer matters, right? So that was one more topic Devulji said I would like to speak, maybe on a Sunday for a bigger audience. Today is business specific, right? Tenancy matters, etc. He has also vetted several legal agreements for client, and at a young age, he has his own set of clients apart from his seniors chamber of clients. From June 2019, Devulji has started his independent law practice to cater to his clients, and he appears for NCLT. Wow, he appears for NCLT. That's exactly insolvency, right? For those who are not aware, NCLT is the new thing, right? And he handles various matters, right, related to NCLT and even trust matters. Of course, he has written many articles, right? And that is just to spread legal awareness. Even today, he has come down here, right, to ensure that there is legal awareness. I thank Nikita ma'am, who brought it to my attention that we should, Nikita Bete, who brought it to my attention that we should have this topic. And of course, Mr. Viral Jain, right, who also said, sir, a topic jara kara dijiye. And incidentally, Viral Bete also suggested Advocate Devul's name, but that was after my confirmation. So I was very happy that after confirming, he didn't know I had confirmed. He said, "Sir, ऐसा सुना है कोई Advocate Devul करके." मैं बोला, "बेटे, he's coming on the platform, already confirmed." With this, sir, I welcome you. Namaste, sir. Namaste. Please, Advocate, over to you. Right.
Thank you so much, sir. Firstly, I would like to thank Anil Menonji for giving me this wonderful opportunity. And of course, today's sponsors and my group of companies and various other people who are, who are in this wonderful initiative that and wonderful drive they have taken to help the needy people. As you all know, my today's topic is modes of recovery under Indian law. So today we will be talking about what are the methods of recovery under Indian law and what are even the remedies available to you when your client does not make you a payment. There are two distinctions over here. One is what are the cases that you can file directly for recovery of money, and what are the other legal remedies that you can take when a client does not make you payment. So these are two aspects to it. Now, the most popular and fundamental ways to recover money under the Indian law are 5 methods. One, first is a commercial or a recovery suit, what we call it. Second, a summary suit. Third, conciliation and arbitration as per the MSME Act. This is especially for those firms, those companies which are registered as MSMEs under the MSME Act. Fourth, arbitration and conciliation as per the Arbitration and Conciliation Act. And fifth one is an insolvency application under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Just firstly coming to our first and the most probably common and the oldest method of recovering money that has been there in our Indian legal jurisprudence since the time Britishers were there is a recovery suit. Now a recovery suit, when you talk about it, it is for recovery of any money due under any law for the timing in force or under any agreement. So when you're talking about recovery suit, it can be suit to recover money under a contract. It can be a suit to recover the balance of the sale proceeds for sale of property. It can be a suit to recover damages for breach of contract. or under the law of tort. So it can be anything and everything in which you seek to recover money. Now, in a recovery suit, it doesn't matter, and this is very important point because this varies from each remedy to remedy. So in a recovery suit, it doesn't matter whom you are and who is the other side. You may be a proprietorship, the other side may be a company, you may be a company, the other side may be a proprietorship, but it doesn't matter. Anybody can file it against anybody. Of course, in Bombay, you cannot file it for recovery of rent because that is the exclusive jurisdiction of a small causes court, which is a special court that has been established for it. Third, a recovery suit is filed in a city civil court or a high court depending upon the nature of transaction. So if it is 1 crore and below, you can file it in the city civil court. If it is above 1 crore, you have to go to the high court. And especially in Bombay, when you have to go outside Bombay, high court do not have the jurisdiction directly to deal with such cases. So you go to the concerned city civil court only, or which we call it district courts. When you're filing a recovery suit, you have to really take a painstaking procedure which is prescribed under CPC. So if I may just give you a short glimpse of it, you will file your claim, that is your proceedings, your plea to recover money with your prayer. Other side will file a written statement. You can carry out amendments. Then you will eventually tell a list of witnesses that you want to lead. Both sides will do that. Then you will give your evidences and your documents. Both the sides will have say on those documents. Then you will in fact go in for an examination. There will be a cross examination, and finally then the matter is posted for hearing. So a very exhaustive procedure is prescribed, and it usually takes years to recover money under this method practically because of the volume of suits we have. Of course, CPC was designed in such a way that you will have day-to-day hearings, but in practicality it does not happen so. Now, where can you file a recovery suit? So a recovery suit has to be filed either where the cause of action has arisen, means wherever the transaction has taken place, in which all cities, which all places the transaction takes place in very simple sense, or where the other side resides. So if you are wanting to recover money, then you have to go where the other side resides. So if you are in Bombay, the other side is in Bangalore, you have to go to Bangalore. Bangalore will also have a jurisdiction. The Bangalore court will also have a jurisdiction to recover money. Or where the other side carries on business. So if the other side has place of business in any other city and you have dealt with that particular company, then you can of course file it over there also. Now the court fees are usually a very again painstaking thing. A huge amount of court fees are involved. It's ideally somewhere around 2%, but it depends on the slab rates also. It is around 2% of the value of the suit. But in recovery case, 1 rupee has one value. So if you have 1 crore, then you can say 2% is round about 2 lakh rupees that you will spend. And once you get an order in your favor, or what you call decree in your favor for recovery of the money, you have to execute that decree by attaching the properties, or there are various modes to do that. So this is in short sense what is a commercial or a recovery suit. Second, and the most important for businessmen, for all of you, is a summary suit. Now summary suit gives you a lot of advantages. A summary suit in a sense is a recovery suit for which a summary, like the name only says it, a summary procedure is prescribed under the orders 37 of Civil Procedure Code. Now these suits can only be filed for recovery of money under 3 types of transactions, which is very much important. One is on negotiable instruments, that is your checks and other negotiable instruments, your promissory note, so on. Second, if you have a written contract for sale of goods or supply of services on the basis of which a fixed sum of money is to be paid to you. And third, it is based on an invoice. So if only one of the 3 conditions are satisfied, you can file a summary suit. Again, here you have to go in for a fixed sum of money. You can't say that, okay, I don't know how much I have to owe, or if you want to file for damages, then you have to again go in for a recovery suit. So a fixed sum of money which you want to recover under your invoices, under your fixed contract, or under a promissory note or a negotiable instrument. Now, the advantage here is the rest of the rules are basically same. when it comes to jurisdiction, filing, valuation, like a recovery suit. But what happens is generally takes a shorter time than a recovery suit. Why is that so? Because some sense the law says that, okay, once you have given certain services, certain goods, the other side has received that goods, then the other side has to pay for it. And it is the prerogative of the other side to prove that why he doesn't owe money under this contract, why he doesn't want to pay. So in a summary suit, which is the most important thing and which many people don't know, is you are not given a right per se to defend your suit. I will be, if I am the person who has to recover money, for example, I will, let's say, file a suit against Anil Ji for a crore rupees, and then Anil Ji has to first prove on the basis of his documents that whether he has a case on merits or no. So first he has to take what is called leave to defend, means a leave to defend himself. So there are three things that can happen here. Either I can prove and that Anil Ji has no defense at all, then the court will, without following the detailed procedure, straight away give an order in my favor. Secondly, what can happen is the court may feel, yes, Anil Ji has certain case, but it's not so strong. So what will court do to protect my interest is court in its discretion will tell Anil Ji, okay, 1 crore is not due, but 80 lakhs is for sure short due. So what you do is you deposit this 80 lakhs with the court, and the court will, deposit it in a fixed deposit account, will earn interest on it for the benefit of mine. And in case I win the suit, I have the money in the court that is sufficient to pay me or to pay a substantial portion or whatever portion that the court has agreed to give me. So that way I am very much protected that, okay, there is certain sum of money already deposited and therefore me in the court. So this again gives you a very big advantage, because what happens is if company subsequently goes under insolvency and all, it actually frustrates the entire the recovery procedure. So this is an advantage. Of course, the third thing is Anil Ji can prove that, look, I have an excellent case on merits. Then of course Anil Ji will be given an unconditional leave, what we call it, or a full-on leave to defend himself without depositing the money. So it can be one of the three situations. So that is where you get an advantage in a summary suit. And of course, I have specially and specifically for the benefit of you all, have suggested certain legal suggestions for you, so that I can practically tell you what is to be followed when and how you can benefit most out of all these procedures that are available to you. So what time you should go in for what are the basic precautions that you should take after I finish this all 5 modes of recovery. So this is, like I said, point E states that either you will be given a conditional leave, unconditional leave, or directly a decree will be passed in my favor. Third is an arbitration and conciliation as per the Arbitration Act. Now, firstly, we will talk about conciliation. Now, a conciliation is basically a neutral person tries to bring an amicable settlement between the parties. So a person will sit down between me and Anil Ji, same example, and say, for example, since Anil Ji said Viral Jain's name, I will just take him as an example. So Viral Ji will sit down with us, and he will try to, make us sit down, bring us to the table, try to tell us that, look, the benefit of both the parties is in an amicable settlement, and try to work out an amicable settlement with us. Of course, Viral Ji cannot bind me. He cannot pass an order against me if I don't want to go in for a conciliation. But he just tries to effectually, try to bring upon a compromise between both the parties. And it is done by a person called as conciliator. So that Viral Ji will be known as a conciliator. If I and Anil Ji settle and we are happy with the certain terms of settlement, then we will reduce it down in the form of a writing, and we will give it to Viral Ji. Viral Ji can pass a consent award. An award basically is an adjudication by an arbitrator. So it has the same effect as if there has been an award or a decree passed by a civil court. So if we both agree to it and if we give it in writing, Viral Ji will pass a consent award, which is effectually a decree of a civil court that you get. But that is only when we both agree. Now the choice of conciliator is upon the wisdom of the parties. No particular as such qualification is required to become a conciliator. If I and Anilji do not, come down to a settlement, then of course we have to resort to an adversarial system, that is taking our dispute to a court or to an arbitrator and fight it out on the basis of documents and on the basis of procedure prescribed therein. Now let's come to the fact of arbitration. Now in arbitration, what happens is, it is in a simple sense an alternate dispute resolution mechanism. So I and Anilji are basically men of commerce. We do not like spending time in court battles, going there, fighting it out years and years and years. So what we can do is we can adopt arbitration. Arbitration is basically an adjudication by an independent third party. It can be any person. However, now there has been a certain qualifications prescribed, that you have to be a person of economics, commerce with certain valid degrees for 10 years experience. But earlier it was that anybody could be an arbitrator, and basically, let's say Viralji is appointed as an arbitrator, he will hear us. He just has to follow principles of natural justice. That means he has to hear us both, give us enough opportunities to present our case, and he will pass his orders as per the rules of law in arbitration. And that order which he passes is known as an award, and that award has same sanctity and can be enforced in a same manner as if a decree of a civil court. So an award passed by an arbitration is equivalent to a decree passed by a civil court itself. And in fact, you can't challenge an award on many of the grounds which you could probably challenge a decree. There is a very narrow ground specified for challenging an award. And under arbitration, you don't have to take the rules of evidence, you don't have to lead evidences, mark documents, all that procedure, hectic procedure is not prescribed. It does not have to be followed. Only a fair and procedure has to be given to all the parties, fair opportunity to represent themselves. Again, here I would like to highlight fast track arbitration. Now, what is fast track arbitration is, basically there are certain matters like recovery especially, where you don't need to lead evidences as such. Whatever is based upon an correspondence between the parties as such, and invoices and written contract. So in fast track arbitration, what happens is, I'll go to an arbitrator, tell him that I want to undertake a fast track arbitration. I will file my facts of my case. I will give him a written pleadings. Both the sides will file their own facts of the case. Both the files will find their own affidavit of evidence with all the documents that they have. And we will say, whatever we want to say, again, we will submit it in a written form and tell the arbitrator, please pass an award. So there has to be no oral hearings to be heard. So arbitrator need not call me. We need not sit with him. We need not, spend so much of time and money and resources and all that to book a conference hall, to incur such kind of an out-of-pocket expenses. We will submit our case in writing and tell him to pass an award. That has to be done typically in 6 months, with a further extension of 6 months between the parties. And arbitration has to be done within a year, with further extension of 6 months with the consent of parties. And further extension, if you want, you have to go to the court. Again, one of the advantages of arbitration is you don't have to pay any sort of court fees that you pay to a civil court. So another advantage is that you are going to a independent third person, sitting down with him, doing quality work and paying no court fees, which are sometimes to the tune of lakhs. Only you have to pay arbitrators fees and venue charges, that is the conference hall charges and out-of-pocket expenses that you have to incur, which is dependent upon the level of arbitrator you take. The higher the qualification, the more would be his fees. Like I said, a decision given by the arbitrator only in the technical sense is referred to as an award, but it is technically a decree of a civil court itself. Arbitrator's decision is not very easy to challenge. It can only be challenged on 4 grounds: public policy of India, incapacity, improper notice of appointment, or non-arbitral issues being arbitrated. That means we didn't agree that this particular dispute has to be going under arbitration, but yet the arbitrator passed an award on that particular issue. So then I can challenge that award, because arbitration requires consent of the parties, that we both agree that yes, if something goes wrong, we will go to an arbitrator. So appeal typically lies to a civil court where you would ideally go if this was probably a civil court dispute. Secondly is an arbitration and conciliation under the MSME Act. And this is one of the landmark initiatives again by the government of India, a wonderful initiative, very simple filing procedure for all MSMEs to undertake arbitration and conciliation as per MSME Act. Now, MSME Act actually refers to Arbitration Act itself. So actually the procedure is same. Only MSME Act carves out certain uh, exceptions or certain prerequisites to start arbitration and conciliation, and it empowers a council to carry out that arbitration. That is the only difference. So what happens if you want to go, if you are an MSME, then you can use this opportunity to go under the Samadhan initiative. The person recovering the money has to be an MSME. A person, other party may be any person. So it is not necessary that the other side has to be an MSME. The person who wishes to recover dues should be an MSME. That is the a criteria that you have to satisfy to undertake arbitration and conciliation as per the MSME Act. Also, you must be having a valid Udyog Aadhaar number. So under the MSME Act, you have to take a registration and register yourself under the Udyog Aadhaar number. If you have not registered under the Udyog Aadhaar scheme, then you will not be able to avail this particular benefit. So it is mandatory for you to register yourself under the Udyog Aadhaar scheme. So here again, conciliation is simple. Only difference is that here there is the government only has prescribed a particular council which is known as Micro and Small Enterprises Facilitation Council. So when you file your application, this council will take up. It will try to the members of this council will try to do a conciliation or try to strike an amicable settlement between you both. If it fails, then they will send you to an arbitration, and where they will send you to arbitration, that will be also decided by the MSME Facilitation Council. So that is the only difference. The remaining arbitration has to be conducted as per the Arbitration and Conciliation Act only. Only difference is here the council, it is MSME council, will try to conduct conciliation. If it fails, either it itself will conduct an arbitration or appoint any arbitral institution to conduct your arbitration. And here it is not necessary that you have a prior contract. An arbitration requires a prior contract. Here, if you are an MSME and you want to avail arbitration or conciliation, you need not have a prior contract. You can straight away request them and they will take up your matter, and it is mandatory for the other side to come here and adjudicate your dispute as per arbitration. So this is one of the more one of the most advantageous position that an MSME has, that even if he has no arbitration clause in his agreement, he can still invoke an arbitration as per the MSME Act. So here, like I said, MSME FC will only conduct arbitration or it will appoint an institution. One of the drawbacks of MSME Act is you can't conduct arbitration if the other side, that is the buyer, is located out of India. So it is mandatory for the buyer to be located within India. A stringent timeline has been prescribed for completing arbitration. Usually, like I said, arbitration has to be done within 12 months with an extension of 6 months. Under the MSME Act, arbitration has to be done within 3 months. So a narrower timeline has been provided. Here again, one of the major advantages is that if I'm a buyer and if MSME is able to get an order and an award against me, then if I want to challenge that award, then I have to deposit 75% of the award that has been amount that has been awarded against me before the court. So here, if as a buyer I want to challenge the award, I have to deposit the 75% of the amount. Then only I can challenge the award. If I'm not able to deposit the 75% of the amount, I cannot challenge the award. This is one of the very important aspects of arbitration under MSME Act. Of course, the court has in appropriate circumstances the power to reduce this amount of deposit. Now we will come to the fourth and the most important one. It is insolvency application under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Some of you who have attended my earlier presentation would be aware about certain things, but I'll just quickly brush up for our benefit of other members. Basically, insolvency applications, when you talk about insolvency, the first thing you have to bear in mind is that these proceedings are technically not to recover money. These are not recovery proceedings per se. So this is one of the first major distinctions that you must understand. This is basically a proceeding that is undertaken under the special law to say that, look, a party is not, a company or a person is not able to pay me his debts. So, carry out insolvency of that particular debtor and pay me whatever is due to me and all the other creditors for the benefit of all the other creditors and persons involved in such procedure. Because otherwise what will happen is, if that person is allowed to continue, he will put himself under more losses. A company will go in further negative balance sheet. So just stop him, see if there is some other person who is willing to take over this company. And if not, let us liquidate it now so that we get maximum value for our money out of the assets of the company. So insolvency code was introduced around December 2016. Now its main aim is to identify default by a company or by an individual at the first instance and maximize the value of assets for the benefit of all creditors and stakeholders. Now, how is it useful? Basically, this application is filed to pressurize the other side that, look, if you don't pay me my money, you have to face insolvency, wherein the company will be snatched out of your hands and will be given to an independent third person to function, to run it, and see if there is any other person, including your competitors, who would want to take over your company. Or in that case, if nobody is willing to take over, then liquidate the company, finish the issue off. The person who takes over the management of the corporate person is known as an IRP or an RP, that is Insolvency Resolution Professional or Resolution Professional. Again, here the only difference is, here you can, earlier the minimum amount of debt for triggering insolvency application prior to the COVID times, that is prior to the 24th March 2020, was 1 lakh rupees. Now this amount has been enhanced to 1 crore rupees. So now if your amount of debt is more than 1 crore rupees, you have no option, below 1 crore rupees, you have no option but to file a summary suit or take up an arbitration or conciliation. So I will just go through the procedure once I finish who can file the application. But here this application has to be filed where I'm here dealing with more with corporate insolvency. Individual insolvency, I'll come at it a little later. It is more draconian in fact. So under corporate insolvency, which is for corporate persons and LLPs, that is private limited companies, public limited companies, one-person companies, and limited liability partnerships, you will have to file this application where the registered office of the company is situated. So the rules applicable for filing summary suit, recovery suit, arbitration are different. Over here, you have to go where the registered office of the company is, irrespective of the fact where you have supplied goods, where you have which branch office of the company you have dealt with. You have to go where the registered office of the company is. So suppose if you have supplied goods to a company whose registered office is in Delhi, you have to file an insolvency application in Delhi. Legal procedure other than insolvency can be resorted to in following cases. Now this is very important. I'm giving you literally practical examples where you can take insolvency proceedings and when you cannot take an insolvency proceedings. So a legal procedure other than insolvency, that is your summary suits and other procedure, can be resorted to in the following cases. One, when the amount of debt is less than 1 crore. because then you don't have a choice only. If there is a dispute raised by the corporate debtor prior to you giving a demand notice, that I'll come to what it is in a short while. But if, let's say, if you want to recover money, trigger insolvency, you have to serve a demand notice. And prior to that, if there is any dispute raised by the other side, then mandatorily you have to adopt to summary suit and other procedures, and you can't come under the insolvency umbrella, because the court will tell you first go and adjudicate your disputes and then come to me. If the corporate debtor does not have sufficient resources in terms of cash, movable properties, investments in plants and machinery, so what has happened is typically insolvency is a great pressurizing tactic for those firms which are in manufacturing segment, those who have good asset base, those who have good lands, those who have good properties basically. Because the service industry, in our practical experience, will be more than happy to say, yes, take my company, there's nothing in it, there are no major assets in it, and most of the directors have already parked their money into some other accounts and siphoned off the money, then it practically becomes very difficult to gain something out of an insolvency application, because his real strength or his real asset is his customer base, and that he can shift from one entity to another entity very easily. So for service oriented firms, consultancy firms which do not have adequate properties, assets, insolvency is just not worth it. If again, if your amount is not recoverable under any law, that means any law puts an embargo on the recovery of money. For example, and the most common example I can give is Money Lending Act. So there is a act called Money Lending Act, wherein if you are giving private loans to various companies to earn interest, then you have to be registered as a money lender with the collector. If you are not registered as a money lender, you can't recover the money. So if you are not registered under that particular act, then you can't recover your money. And if you can't recover your money, you can't file an application for insolvency as well. Now here I'll deal with what is insolvency and how does it work. So like I said, the authority, the court under the Insolvency Act is the NCLT, having jurisdiction over the registered office of the corporate debtor. There is one example. After 24th March, the minimum amount of debt was raised to 1 crore. Now here again, one more important thing. Before the new Amendment Act has come into picture, which says that if you have any debt which became due after 24th March, means the debt became due payable after the 24th March 2020, then you can't file an insolvency application for that debt. So that debt must have become due prior to 24th March 2020. And still that should have been more than 1 crore. Okay. Second most important point to remember here is debt includes interest component. So if even my, let's say the debt amount is 90 lakhs and over the period of 1 year, due to my interest clause in my invoice, the amount goes beyond 1 crore, I can still file an insolvency application. Debt includes interest component as well. Like I said, now who can file an insolvency application? Unlike summary suit, arbitration, conciliation, where any person can file it against any person, if you want to file an insolvency application against a corporate debtor, corporate client, then 3 types of persons can only file it. One is a financial creditor. A financial creditor is basically a person who has lent money to the corporate debtor for interest. Now that interest may come in any form. It may come in cash. It may come in an option to convert your debentures into shares, your loan into shares, your loan into any kind of other benefits for the company. But the essential idea should be that you are advancing money to get certain sort of a benefit, interest from that money. Here, when you're talking about a financial creditor, he doesn't have to file, he doesn't have to serve any prior notice. He can directly go and file the application. He just has to prove 2 things. One, there is a debt. Secondly, there is a default on that debt. That's it. And once that he is able to prove as per the contract, or as per the terms of understanding, your insolvency application will be admitted straight away. No defenses can be taken, no other grounds can be raised. Second is an operational creditor, which is of course beneficial for you all. An operational creditor is basically a person who has supplied goods or services to the corporate debtor. If you want to trigger insolvency as an operational creditor, then you have to first serve a demand notice. Now here the timing of the demand notice becomes the most crucial thing, because whatever a company says after demand notice is irrelevant. You can forget about all the defenses he has raised after the service of demand notice. Whatever he has raised prior to the service of demand notice will be considered. And even if he has raised one bogus defense also prior to the issue of demand notice, and ideally the NCLT will say, go first, adjudicate your dispute by a civil court and then come to me. And then I will admit insolvency. So here the timing of the notice becomes of utmost importance. How do you time your notice? Because once that notice goes, you are secured enough that the other side cannot raise any sort of a dispute, any frivolous issue with you over the goods supplied or services that you have rendered. Now the third type of applicant is the corporate debtor itself. So a company can also itself declare itself as bankrupt, and insolvency proceedings will be undertaken. So a company may file an application saying that, look, I cannot pay my debts. Please admit insolvency with respect to my company. Now, usually the time limit for declaring a person is 14 days, but on a practical scenario, it usually takes 5 to 8 months. Sometimes it takes more, sometimes it takes less time also. But on an average, it takes 5 to 8 months for the petition to either be admitted or to be dismissed. So like I said, an insolvency is an alternative to and not a substitute to recovery proceedings. It is technically not a proceeding to recover money. It is, if that petition is admitted, the directors lose control over the management of the company, and the company can be taken over by any bidder. So what happens is, if the application is admitted, IRP or an insolvency professional will sit on the company, will run the company, will invite claims. Now another important thing is, you have to file, if you are a creditor of that company and has to recover money from that company, you have to file your claims within 14 days. So you have to keep a track of that company, you have to keep a track of your debtors, that your debtors are not going under insolvency. Once they go under insolvency, you have to immediately file your claim within 14 days. If you don't file within 14 days, you can still file it within 90 days on sufficient cause being shown. But if you file after 90 days and already some other bidder comes to take over that company, then you can legally forget about your debt. Then legally your debt is extinguished. Legally now the company does not owe you any debt, so you can forget about your money. So this is how important insolvency is. It's very time bound process, so you have to be really keeping a track of your debtors as well. So he will run the company, he will try to collect as much as information about the company as possible, declare that, look, this company is open to being taken over by a third person, whoever wants to take over this company in whatever form he wants to take over the company. And if that proposal to take over the company is accepted by the financial creditors, that means creditors who have given loan to the company, then that person will take over the company as per the terms of his resolution plan, what we call it. If that thing fails, no bidders come forward, then the company will be liquidated. See, Insolvency Act application basically acts as a deterrent for many companies, as the company and its business is going ahead, going out of your hands, especially if you have even important IPRs in the company that will go to your rival. Again, it gives you an excellent opportunity if you want to expand your business, whether horizontally, whether vertically, to acquire your competitors. If your competitor goes under insolvency, you can take over your competitor and grow yourself. And you may be able to really take him over at very cheap or subsidized rates. That is the thing. And I've seen many startups crying before NCLT that they have lost their unique IPRs, they have lost their unique ideas, because now, since they took insolvency very lightly, there is some other person who wants to take over this company. Again, once, like I said, once liquidation is passed, again you have to file your claim with the liquidator. Now he's the insolvency professional is termed as a liquidator, and you have to file your claim with him for within 30 days again. So if even if you file a claim in the insolvency stage, don't think that you don't have to again file a claim. If the company eventually goes in liquidation stage, you have to again file a claim. So don't be under the impression that once I filed the claim, so I don't have to do it again. So the simple idea about entire insolvency is like I've given in this example. Suppose 20 lakh rupees was due to me by some company. Let's say, for example, Aditya Birla. And let's say that 20 lakhs Aditya Birla was not able to pay me. So I will file an insolvency application. Insolvency application would be admitted. The board of directors of Aditya Birla Capitals will lose their control over the company. Insolvency professional will run the company. Tell all the creditors, please submit whatever your dues are from the company. Please give me the information. Please file your claim. So I know exactly how much the company has to pay to you, so that even the prospective bidder knows what is the liabilities of the company, so he can bid for it accordingly. He will collect the information about the assets of the company as well. He will place this information to all the people who want to take over the company, all the bidders who show interest to take over this company. If any of them are actually interested, they will submit their bidding, that is a resolution plan. If any plan is accepted, then that will he will take over the company as per the plan. If it is not accepted or if there are no plans, then the company will be liquidated. Then the insolvency professional will act as a liquidator, will sell off all the assets of the company, and in the manner given under the code, he will give you your money back, whatever comes to your share. That may be anything. And honestly, I have seen in my practical experience, n number of creditors have benefited from insolvency. We have recovered sometimes time bar debts also. We have recovered small big debts, and it works magically sometimes. You know, people can just get amount within 6 months or so. So that is the importance of it. Like I said, if you can file insolvency against your debtors, you also must be having your creditors for whom you are the debtor, and they can trigger it against you also. So you have to be very much aware about when I'm defaulting, what is the basic precautions that I must take when I'm defaulting, and you must immediately consult a lawyer once you know that you're going to default or you have defaulted. You can't just afford to sit behind today. So I have explained this process. If anybody wants the slides, can take up and read it. I have explained it in a very simple format. Now, one more thing that I want to draw everybody's attention to, an important aspect. The insolvency code prescribes something that is called information utility. Now, this is a first of its kind initiative by the government. So under insolvency code, what the government has done is basically the government has made a data center. So these are companies who will accept information with respect to debt default from various creditors and will store it, and it will be accessible to various other persons, so that I know what is the exposure of that particular company, what are the sort of the debts that the company has from financial institutions as well as from operational creditors. So an information utility is basically a data center where I as a creditor can file a debt information regarding debt and default with respect to my debtors with this company. This company will send an intimation to that particular debtor that look, that particular creditor has filed an information of default with me, whether you accept it or refuse this particular situation, this particular debt. The other side has 7 days, which are extendable by 3 days, depending upon every information utilities policies and procedure. If he does not revert to it, it will be deemed admission. If he disputes it, it will be shown as dispute. If he admits it, it will be shown as an admission. Now, why I am telling you all people to do this is, This is right now only mandatory for financial creditors. So if you are a financial creditor, you have lent money to any person, any company, then this is mandatory for you to do it. And it is mandatory if you want to file an insolvency application. But as an operational creditor, this gives you an n number of advantages. For example, tomorrow if you do a data filing and if the other side admits your debt, then your limitation period is revived. Your case becomes much more stronger. Thirdly, the other side, even if you go for a civil court suit, cannot dispute the fact that you were aware about these invoices. So he cannot raise privilege grounds that I was never aware about these invoices. This is a false document. This is a frivolous document. Such kind of defenses he won't be able to take. And this is my prediction that in the long run, information utility will play a key role when it comes to recovery of debt. And in that sense, it gives government also an excellent idea about what is the exposure of each company, whether each company is being transparent with respect to its all government filings, GST filings, and everything. And the future is that everything is going to be centralized and government would know everything that you're doing. Uh, so there is only one information utility as of now, that is National E-Governance Services Limited. I would suggest each and every one of you to file your information with respect to debt. Each filing takes only 100 to 300 rupees when it comes to fees, and plus whatever professional fees, or you can even train your staff to do it. It's not that difficult a procedure. Now these are some of the advices, some of the do's and don'ts that you should be always remembering for shielding yourself from the insolvency code or for effectively utilizing the insolvency code. And then I'll come to certain legal points and suggestions I have for all of you. Now, first is, no matter how good your relationships are with your creditors, if there is any dispute, you must immediately write it, and that to send it in writing form or in the form of a mail or in the form of a letter to the other side immediately, because your intentions may be good, your creditor's intentions may not be that great, and once he serves you the notice, you can't do anything about it. So whenever there is a dispute, if there is a defect in the goods, deficiency in the services, immediately write it. What I have seen is practically people suffer under the insolvency code because they do not have sufficient working capital to pay the liquid debts. So sometimes if their money is stuck with their major clients or their debtors are not paying them, and they are not in turn being able to pay their creditors, and hence they are dragged under the insolvency, even though they are profitable firms as such or profitable companies as such. So always have extra working capital requirements worked out. Always have a plan for backup resources worked out. These are all practical as well. Consult a lawyer before every transaction. This is very important, as 80 or 90% of the times I have dealt with any particular client, nobody bothers about what type of invoices they are drafting, what sort of POs are raised upon them, what type of contracts you are entering into. Nobody is bothered because everybody is focused only on getting the business. Nobody is focused on legal aspects of the business. Now, when you do business with big guys, L&T or any other big name in the market, you should see their POs. They are so draconianly drafted, one-sidedly drafted. They have, really, protected themselves legally. So even you have to do that. It's very important for you to realize that. Just don't go behind the business, see the legal implications as well, and consult a lawyer. Because I think the era is after 5 years down the line that, like in the US, like in the European countries, one wrong step legally can put your business in big trouble. And legal thing or having a lawyer with you will become a must, just like you need a CA, a retainer CA, or a permanent CA in your company employee, or a practicing CA for consultation. You need a lawyer to every time consult and work you out through everything. Otherwise, you will suffer very bad. And that's what happens in 80 of the 90% of the cases we deal with. Is nobody bothers about legal aspects, and then they come crying, okay, this is not there, that is not there. I never wrote to them. All my follow-ups were oral follow-ups. बात हुआ था but written में कुछ नहीं है. So please don't make that mistake. However it works out for you, you do it. You want a retainer, you want a permanent employee, but have somebody there as per the size of your business. And start looking for legal aspects of your business as a value contribution, because they can really save your bad debts. It also works in twin ways. Now, as like I have done with for a particular client, your legal guys can immediately take over the matter at the first instance. When there is a default, they can follow it up. They know how smartly to write a follow-up mail, a notice, and how to put you in an advantageous position. And trust me, 90% of the time, it does not matter how good your case is. It matters how fast you move to the courts and how effective you are to take your actions in a timely manner. This is what matters. And then you can even avoid complications in your case. Always have invoice properly drafted. An invoice must always have an interest clause. If you want to have a jurisdiction clause, then a jurisdiction clause, and certain other basic terms and conditions. Always have an interest clause, please, because it gives you an advantage. It gives you a leverage to fight and to get some extra money, because the court can award you only higher interest if your invoice clause or your agreement has an interest clause. Otherwise, the court cannot grant you interest. Uh, like I said, understand the implications of every contract. In case of dispute, start litigation early. Make sure everything is well documented. Your follow-ups, your all things are well documented, and for payment there is regular follow-up. In a series of transactions, I always advise clients that you always ask for confirmation of account, or okay, if your other side wants more time to make payment, just tell them, okay, in a very smart way, please give me a confirmation of accounts. Please give me something in writing as, yes, I will make you payment in 60 days. Take that in writing. Or even if you want to give more time, tell him to give you a post-dated check, because check really changes the rules of the games. Because if there is a check issued in your favor, it again acts as an admission of debt. You can go in for a summary suit even if you don't have a legal contract. Plus, you can initiate 138 proceedings. So it really pressurizes the other side, and that is a criminal proceeding. So it works magically in your favor. Now, some of the basic don'ts are: don't give any representations or undertakings which you are not seeking to be bound by. Don't take your undertakings very lightly. Uh, Always peruse the invoices and purchase orders raised upon you very carefully. Do not go beyond your capacity practically, because if you go way beyond your capacity, you may just suffer if there is a cash flow crunch, and your entire business would be at stake. Do not depend upon too much. Do not depend too much uh, on a single client for a business, and try to have diversified clients. And this I'll tell you by a practical experience, that there is a big industrial association in Nashik which suffered hugely because of one big client they were catering to, and that client defaulted in payments, and that default was to the tune of 180 crores. And everybody, all MSMEs, there are around more than 100 MSMEs which suffered, and I was called upon to give them certain consultancy with respect to insolvency code, and I was just guiding them. So, don't depend upon one client too much. Otherwise, if that client suffers, you also suffer. Thirdly, do not do business, again, very important, do not do business in a sole proprietorship or a partnership model. Individual insolvency is not yet notified. It is soon going to be notified, probably after another 6 months. Individual insolvency is draconian, trust me. You will be sent insolvency notices for every debt that you default in, maybe, and the basic amount of default is only 1,000 rupees. So every advocate will send you a notice under the Insolvency Act, and then will try and pressurize you. If he's able to get the petition admitted somehow, you have your entire personal assets, personal house, and everything at stake. And every lawyer, trust me, once individual insolvency is notified, is going to send you an insolvency notice, irrespective of the fact he sends you a legal notice or not. He will send you an insolvency notice. I would do that for my client. Now, legal points and suggestions that I have. Now you must remember that a suit for recovery must be filed within 3 years of the date when the debt became due. So let's say you supplied goods today and payment became due after 30 days. So from that 30 days expiring, you have 3 years time period to file a suit for recovery. If you don't file a suit within that time, you cannot then later on file any proceeding for recovery of money. Or you will have to file an application for condonation of delay, and only on the subject to that application being allowed by the court will your matter be taken up. But then technically, it's very difficult to have the delay condoned because 3 years is a sufficient time period. An application for insolvency also must be filed within 3 years. So this is the same rule applies to even to an insolvency application. Uh, in case of if you are procuring goods from any particular vendor, and if that vendor has an arbitration clause in his invoice, then remember that you are bound by that arbitration clause. So uh, if you don't want to go into arbitration, and so then you should always carefully peruse invoices that are raised upon you as well, because if that invoice has an arbitration clause, then you have to go in for a mandatory arbitration, even though you may not have in that sense specifically agreed to go into arbitration. Like I said, under insolvency laws, a claim with insolvency professional has to be filed within 14 days of the company going under insolvency and its public announcement being made. If you fail to do that, then your amount is no longer recoverable as per the law. So forget about your money if you miss that timeline. In case of liquidation, the time period is 30 days. Here, of course, you can file it beyond 30 days, but then you will have to have the delay condoned by the NCLT. So you will incur a lot of expenditure on filing an NCLT application unnecessarily, and paying for a huge legal fees as well. Like I said, after demand notice, subsequent disputes are immaterial in case of corporate insolvency. Uh, the advantage of moving to insolvency is also that if your application is admitted and if the company wants to settle with you, wants to come out of the insolvency, then first thing it has to settle with you. So that is another advantage you get when your application is admitted, that if the company wants to come out, and we are seeing this in n number of applications, and the company first has to pay you out, and then only it can file an application for withdrawal. Terms incorporated in an invoice is also a part of contract that you enter into. Make sure you read them carefully. Damages clause must be very well and very cleverly drafted. You would always want damages or at least an option to recover damages if the other side defaults. So make sure your damages clause is well drafted, and in the same manner when it is drafted against you, make sure you are keeping the amount of damages as low as possible in the contract for your benefit. Penalty clauses under the Indian Contract Act, the penalty is not recoverable. Another important point is somebody tells you that I'm penalizing you for not making me payment, there is no penalty that can be recovered under Indian law. My some suggestions that I have for you all. Like I said, carry business in LLP or corporate structure. Smartly structure your LLP and corporate business model. If you smartly structure it, it can give you an n number of benefits, not only in terms of taxation benefits, but in terms of the limited resources that you put in the company, so that if the company goes under insolvency, your assets are protected. There is n number of things that you can do smartly. There are many advices that I can give you. Many big companies do this, so do it smartly. Do not give personal guarantees for loans given to corporate. So if you are a director of the company and a promoter, don't go beyond your capacity. If there are loans taken, make sure it is loan against the properties of the company. Don't give personal guarantees, because personal insolvency to the extent of personal guarantors to corporate loans is notified already. So you will be dragged into it. Uh, if you're an individual, make sure you invest heavily and quite adequately in life insurance policies and pension funds that can, because they are exempt under the personal insolvency from attachment. So that is one thing. When you're selling with goods, when you're dealing with goods, So make sure your documents, matlab, the contract really specifies when the title is to be passed. Because in goods cases, title in goods, the property in goods passes when the parties agree for it to be passed. So you have to be very smart when you want the title to pass. So if you're a seller of goods, make sure you're very clever with this aspect. So it can give you a lot of advantages, and you can also keep a lien over your own goods, a security or a charge over your own goods. Always have your resources well planned. Uh, Keep track of your debtors. Uh, if you cannot, make sure you have a lawyer who can keep track of your all debtors under insolvency. Consult an advocate immediately on default. Uh, in case your debtor requests time for payment, always take a post-dated check as a security. Start legal action early. This is a guru mantra for it will solve 50% of your cases. And consult an advocate at earliest. Raise disputes on time, and you have to raise a specific dispute. So just don't write saying there is a dispute. You consult a lawyer on how you want to draft the dispute clause. What is the dispute? Make sure that is effectively brought forward, because NCLT has already opined that you can't raise a generic dispute. You have to raise a specific dispute. In case of insolvency, the timing is very much crucial. With this, I end my presentation, and thank you so much for everybody for patiently listening to me. And once again, thank you to Anil sir for giving me this wonderful opportunity and to interact with you all. I hope you have found certain good points that you will always remember. And in case of any query about this presentation or generally, you can feel free to contact me. Thank you so much.
So a couple of, before we take questions, a couple of very, Devulji, that remain, please. Yeah, that last slide should remain, sir. So anybody wants to get in touch with you, they should. I would request your, no, the last slide, sir.
Yes,
Giving your contact details. Yeah, so very important point that was raised. Pension funds and life insurance policy is exempt from Individual Insolvency Act. That was very, very important points. Before we take questions, Abhishek has already put his first question. I felt there were two things that I kept on writing as always. The summary suit is the one which Devulji was saying that, it looks good. Then what my colleague said was normal recovery would take time, but summary is good. Yes, if you're an MSME, Udhyam Aadhar is very important to register under Udhyam Aadhar. So that is extremely good. Of course, not applicable for bigger companies like Damodar, but others definitely useful. And arbitration clause, if it is already mentioned, then it will go to an arbitrator. So that is again one point which I remembered. So if it is already mentioned in the invoice, then then it will have to go to arbitrator. Then do not agree to all the terms and conditions. Please read carefully. Hopefully have a lawyer to vet all your documents, especially the ones you agree to. Insolvency Act can be used as a pressure tactic. It can be used as a pressure tactic. Now the limit is raised to 1 crore. But yes, you can use it, and many students have Vaibhav Jain, Guwahati, able to recover a long outdated case. Vaibhav Jain is the name of the student. So anybody looking for experience sharing, write to me. I'll connect you to Vaibhav Jain. Most important, debt can include interest amounts also. One thing that struck me was that 14-day thing. Once a corporate goes into insolvency, you have to immediately file within 14 days. That means all of us have to be aware of all these provisions. You can't just sit back and sleep. Or at least 90 days if you have specific reasons to do that. It is basically a deterrent. And one very important point, the info utility. I've written a lot of points, right? It was a technical presentation. This is the way law is, right? So Devulji is ready to share his PPT also, but sir, you try to simplify it, right? You reminded me of my professor in Bajaj, Mr. Malar, right? Info utility. So he said that at least as operational creditor also use it, because then the period of limitation does not apply. The first thing from Abhishek Biyani, which came in at 7:54 p.m. today, I have ledger confirmation of my customer. Do I still need all e-way bills and signed copy of receipt of material to file a summary suit? Or can I file the suit against ledger confirmation from the customer? First
So
question to you, Devilji.
no, you need invoices. You have to give all your e-way bills as well. Only the confirmation accounts will act as an admission of debt. So your case becomes very strong when there is a summary suit that look, they have already admitted my debt, and so they can't really retract from that admission now. So most probably 90% of the times you will be straight away given a decree in your favor. But yes, you have to file all your invoices and e-way bills also.
A second again from Abhishek Biani, this time at 8 o'clock, 8:02. My association has passed an award, and how fast can we expect the recovery on the same, as it has already taken an year or more to get my recovery and yet no result?
So I don't know whether he has filed an application for execution of that award or no, but he has to file an application for execution of the award with the civil court and then undertake the execution procedure. It depends.
Sir, Devulji, immediate response, execution filed in court.
So it usually takes round about, it depends on how complicated your client wants to make it the other side, but it usually takes on an average, let's say 3 years or so to execute it. If it has to go till the end of the execution. And also you have to ensure that you do not miss your timelines, your lawyer does not miss the timelines for, issuing a warrant of attachment and so on. Those timelines he does not misses so that there will be more pressure on the other side, because what happens is if you miss the timelines, you have to again do it. You have to again file an application with the court to say that please reissue a warrant of attachment, in terms of which please again issue me a warrant of sale, then undertake that sale procedure. So your lawyer shouldn't ideally miss that timeline. It usually takes around 3 years or so to execute that. I just want to say one thing. If in the meantime, during the pendency of execution proceedings, if an insolvency is admitted with respect to that particular company, though some other creditor would have filed it, then you have to file your claim within 14 days over there. And then these proceedings will be stayed. So typically there are 90 days given from the time a warrant of attachment is issued in your favor to apply for a warrant of sale. So after the expiry of 30 days, so there is a time limit given for when that warrant will be, valid. And after that, there is a 90-day period that is given to you for, applying to the court for now attachment is done, still no payment has come. Now please sell the property. So that's when you apply for warrant of sale. So make sure you don't miss that, because once you miss that, you will have to again retake the whole procedure. You'll again have to apply for warrant of attachment. When the application is allowed, order is passed in your favor, take a certified copy, make the warrant of attachment, give it to bailiff, bailiff will again serve it, then again apply for warrant of sale. So if you miss one timeline, you have to start again, because that warrant becomes in that sense infructuous.
Sir, I have become MSME now, but my bills are due before I became MSME. Can I still file case now in Samadhan initiative?
As per me, no, you can't file.
Harsh Gupta, sir, can you please clarify the maximum time period till which we can file for recovery suit or summary suit? What if this time period is passed?
So like I said, the time period is 3 years from the date when the debt became due. Due means after the credit period has expired, if at all there was a credit period. You have 3 years. After the 3 years expires, then you can't file any proceeding. If you want to file after the expiry of 3 years, then firstly you will have to file an application for condonation of delay. So you are making an application to the court that please, these were the grounds on why I couldn't file it within 3 years. Please condone my delay. If that delay is condoned, then only your suit will be registered. Otherwise, the suit itself will not be registered till that time. And if it's not allowed, then forget about your money. And that can be extended if there is an admission in your favor. So admission either can be a confirmation of account, some written letter admitting debt or partial amount of debt, or a check. That's why I said check does wonders to you.
What is the best recourse for amounts between 5 lakhs to 50 lakhs?
Summary suit or arbitrations, either of them, depending on what is your budget, what is your capacity to spend in an arbitration. So if you are ready to spend a bit higher amount, I would suggest going for an arbitration, particularly fast track arbitration, I would say, because suits for recovery are basically based on documents. You don't really need oral examination or cross examination of witnesses as such, and these things don't matter that much. So going for a fast track arbitration, if you can't, then your only option is a summary suit, and which is the next most effective option in your case.
Right. They will be sorry, but maybe I'm making you repeat. I apologize. When you said budgets for arbitration, what is that amount?
So it depends. Actually, it depends on what fees you negotiate with the arbitrator. So both the parties ideally have to bear 50-50% of the shares. If there are more than one respondents, then they share the 50% internally equally. So if there are 5 respondents, 50% is borne by respondents and typically, and 10% would be borne by each of the respondents. If there is only one respondent, then 50-50. The claimant will be 50, they will be 50. Whoever wins the arbitration can claim this amount as a cost of the proceedings. So the award will also specify that the winning party will get entitled to cost from the other side. So I can be entitled, if I win the case, I will say that 50% of the cost what I've expended should be given back to me now from the other side's account. So the award will say that please pay the cost also. That is again discretion of the arbitrator, but usually they will give you full cost.
Sorry, before I go to Harsh Gupta's next query, for them to, for anybody to initiate arbitration clause, that should be mentioned in the invoice or the agreement, no?
Yes, of course. Or you agree simultaneously after that.
Okay.
But
You
that
can
can be
also
only
agree simultaneously after that, but that is very unlikely.
yes. So you have to come to an agreement. Otherwise, either a prior agreement or a subsequent agreement, then only you can invoke arbitration. The only exception I said was an MSME under the Samadhan initiative. The act gives you the power that despite there being no arbitration clause, you can invoke first conciliation and then arbitration.
Before I take Harsh question, I get a feeling that being an MSME is very good in India. I'm getting a feeling like that over the last 60s. I'm sorry, I'm not joking. I'm serious when I'm saying this. So the moment I start looking at the laws, the stimulus package, I agree that it is to protect the MSME sector. But somewhere I get a feeling that being an MSME in India is good enough. Is one more message which is coming out, and I'm serious. Is that true? If that
Yes,
is the case, then can some bigger companies become MSMEs? Like, can they go for a demerger and say, okay, let's have 3 divisions as 3 different companies and each one of them going under MSME? Can we do that, sir?
yes, yes, you can do that. Many companies, in fact, have done that. If I'm not wrong, those who because now the limit has also increased substantially for being termed as an MSME. So many companies who were there probably having 3 segments contributing 200, 300 crores have demerged themselves and gone under the MSME because they get, of course, I'm not an expert in the taxation benefits or the export oriented benefits that they get, but under even legally, even under the insolvency code, if I may point out, MSMEs are the only person, promoters of the MSME are the only person who can bid back for their own companies. So if my company goes under MSME and it is an MSME, it goes under corporate insolvency resolution process, I can again bid for that company, which I cannot do in case of any other company. Only MSME can do that. So I can take back my own company, restructure my own debts, and come back into the business once again. That is also one of the advantages an MSME has.
Harsh Gupta again. We have filed insolvency for our debtor to recover dues, but their assets are not enough to cover all the debts. Shall we continue or withdraw from proceedings as we are operational creditors? Very good question, Harsh.
What is his exposure?
Harsh, what is your exposure? Please, if you could come on chat and mention, right? Approximately 8 crores.
Then definitely they should continue with their insolvency application. In case, let's assume the fact that probably it was not an insolvency and you go to a summary suit. Okay. So even if your summary suit was going on in today's point in time, assuming even if you had a decree in your favor and you were in an execution proceeding, and let's say some other creditor filed an application against this company and brought it under CIRP, you will have to abandon your summary suit and come over here before the NCLT. So anyways, your efforts are wasted over there. Secondly, here there will be the idea like for an insolvency is that today that company's assets are worth to pay you, let's say, 20% of your value. Tomorrow they
Yes,
will become.
Advocate Devilji, Harshji said that assets are valued at 3 crores. So your assumption is right.
Yes. So today they are in a position to pay you 20-30%, but tomorrow that will become probably 10%. So at least now you are in a position, or the major, you are in a position to recover indirectly 30% with benefit to all other creditors as well. But and anyways, when a company is not able to pay its debts, the logical end of a company has to come through insolvency and not through a recovery proceeding. So here everything for one shot will be settled. There, if you go and somebody else comes over here, anyways you'll have to come over here. There again, if you get a new decree in your favor, if there is no sufficient assets, you will have to file for insolvency. And why not do it right now and take the 30% that you can get now? That is the idea behind it.
So Harsh is also saying financial creditors are in the tune of 18 crores. So practically operational creditors come after financial creditors, but still it is good to continue, is what you're saying, sir.
Yes. Or if you don't see, if you're sure that you are not going to get a single penny out of it, or you are sure that the directors of the company or promoters don't mind for this company to go down into insolvency, then you withdraw it and let financial creditors do their job. But since now you have already spent that much amount and effort, I would say that for little more amount and efforts, don't withdraw it, because if the company wants to ever come out or do anything, then it has to first settle with you. So you will have that advantage by chance they ever intend to come out of it.
Thank you, sir. Respected KC Shetty, sir, Indian Bunds Chamber of Commerce, right, industry. The president is asking a very important question. Most of the multinationals and big Indian companies don't make payments to MSMEs in 45 days, as per MSME law. If they are not paying, what to do? Also, if we are there, they are our main customers. How to convince them to pay?
Basically, I would firstly advise them to use the Samadhan initiative, um, the Samadhan remedy, for two reasons. Practically, one, you will get an option of sitting on the table and carrying out conciliation with your that other party. Of course, in India, most of the, or in general also, most small companies don't want to lose their big clients. They are always want to keep them on board. So Samadhan maybe just be the right option in terms of you are sitting down on the table with them. Plus, once you are able to convince the MSME FC that their dues are not paid, then they can also the auditor has to put a qualification on their accounting statements. So if MSME has not been paid within 45 days, then the auditor cannot sign the financial statements. There has to be a qualification in their audit report. So this many uh, big corporates don't like, and this might be the most apt way to start on a soft footing, that you don't want to even lose your client, try to settle around with him, and at the same time create some sort of a pressure on him. And then of course you can take the arbitration route or the summary suit route, whatever is being fit, but ideally you'll have to go to arbitration after that. So I would suggest then take arbitration after that. And if you are sure that your that major client is going to fall down, in the sense that his financial status is become a little, you know, hodgepodge one, and it's not in a good position, make sure that you explore the insolvency option as well immediately, because that will help you to add tremendous amount of pressure. And many people have taken money and gone out by starting first, filing the first application, because even directors, in most cases, practically, I'll tell you, they need time to settle down. They need time to siphon off their money. So the first few cases who just go against them, they will try to settle it out. You get your payment, you are happy, and then suddenly one day they'll admit somebody else's petition, and then you know operational creditors usually then don't get that big pile of shares. So that's why I say start early, so you can be you can be in that seen that who is able to first take everything out of the bucket and then leave the rest for the others.
K.C. Shetty sir is again saying this. We want to continue with them. They are two good customers. We are dealing with them for almost 40 years.
So I would then suggest, see, Samadhan, if I'm talking about just comparing the remedies per se, I am a fan of Samadhan Portal when it comes to really big clients, but I'm not a fan of Samadhan when it comes to dealing with clients who have not much to lose or nothing to fear kind of clients, or who are mid-level clients. Because these guys usually don't pay that much heed to a Samadhan Portal proceedings. That is what practically happens. So if you are going against a medium to big client or medium client, or a client who does not have much to lose or who doesn't bother it, then I would say uh, explore your insolvency and your legal notice angle very efficiently. You may not file a proceeding, but just sending that notice will always keep you in a very leveraged position. Always, it gives you a big advantage. And because what happens is if somebody wants to, let's say, delay your payment or do all the raise all the defenses under the law that are available to them, then they will start taking that thing. They will write you a letter. They will, and in our system, sometimes it's said that it is easier to defend a client rather than to fight for a client, because there are n number of tactics that you can adopt to delay your payments, and you can easily, unless a judge takes a very special interest in the matter, there are so many tactics people can adopt to delay matters, and create complications. So I would then say start early, use your legal resources well, your legal notice, your insolvency notice, so that you are always on the front foot, because whatever he says after that, or the judge would also consider that only when I have sent a legal notice, he is replying with a dispute. So you start early, not allow him to create a scenario where he is able to depict that look, there are a number of complications in the matter, there are disputes, there are defects. So then, for such kind of client, I really don't advise Samadhan. I say come to legal recourse, because Samadhan is then not that very effective.
If I filed a summary suit and someone else takes the customer to insolvency, are my efforts wasted in the summary suit?
Yes, technically yes, because not wasted. See, what happens is if your claim is admitted, when you submit your claim documents to the IRP, he will verify your claim. He will see whether your documents are in order, yes, there is a genuine debt in his opinion, and he'll admit it. Then it's fine. Things are all smooth. Let's say if he feels that there is dispute with respect to this matter, or your documents are not convincing enough for verifying that amount of debt, then your efforts are not wasted, because what happens is in such cases, your claim will be taken into account, but will not be paid to you, and will only be paid to you subject to, if I'm just saying in a very simple sense, will be paid to you subsequent to your, after the CIRP gets over, some other company takes over the company, then your efforts are not wasted, because your summary suit can continue, because only if you win that case you will get this whatever proportionate amount that was allotted to you. So for example, if my suit was of 100 rupees, I filed the suit. Subsequently, some other creditor dragged the company into insolvency. Sure. So basically, like I said, if 30 rupees is the percentage that has to be given to you, that 30 rupees will be kept aside, and only on when you win the summary suit will that 30 rupees will be given to you. So that is the only exceptional case when your efforts are not wasted.
So it's been incredible, sir, listening to you. I think I should thank all of you. In fact, thank you from K.C. Shetty sir itself, is the respected senior itself is audible. You have helped each one of us. I would request you to, again, if possible, in the chat, if you could please type down your the contact details. I'll be very happy. Shreyans, I should thank you, Bete. You are the sponsor for today's session, right? I'm so happy we could help people recover their hard-earned money. So there are a couple of things. We talked about Samadhan, but there's something beyond Samadhan also, which was discussed today, right? The recovery suit, the summary suit, right? A lot of things I have noted down for my learning, right? Especially one more part of is that the Individual Insolvency Act coming in is something which I also learned today. always a pleasure. I think the person who has learned the most from these sessions is me. Anil Biyani ji is saying thank you very, very much, the respected promoter of Damodar Industries. All right, and he's
My
saying thank you
privilege.
to you, sir, for a super session. Knowing your basics and understanding your business legal portion is more important, right? And then just going for recovery. So know your business's legal position again is being said. So as I said, one reason I want to introduce all professionals here is I'm very clear you should seek their help, right? They are doing these sessions on pro bono basis. It's your hard-earned money, right? Please feel free to talk to them, right? Of course, off, right? And then take their advice, right? Professional advice. Thank you very much, all of you all. Good night, right? Thank you, Devulji, again, right?
Thank you
Very
so much
happy.
for inviting me.
You have benefited many colleagues, and now this once it is uploaded, many more colleagues will be benefited. Sir, business is on, so many of the students are not able to attend. But I'm sure once they go through the videos, I just realized that Vimal Jain himself is not there today, but he's tracking us through the YouTube Ben and Mantras. He was just telling me about Sachet Mehta's third session, right, which just got uploaded today. Thank you very, very much. All right. Thank you, Shanti ma'am. Thank you all
Thank
of
you,
you.
sir. And I thank Prerit ji. He never misses talking about me and thanking me.
Thank you.
It feels
That
great.
is the final thing he says, but that is the values that these students have. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very, very much.
definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.